We are now with students about to start their final third. Welcome. This is a University of Liverpool Online webinar focused on your dissertation success. This is a very exciting dissertation for us because we're happy, really happy to be here to get you off to a good start on this final chapter of your online degree. Now, we're going to talk. These are the final steps before your graduation. Now, they're big steps, and we're going to spend about the next hour helping you out with that. Once again, this is Dissertation Success. Welcome. My name is Stephen Merrifield. I'm from the Digital Events team. Let's cover today's agenda. We're going to define a dissertation. We're going to talk about the process. Vishali is going to talk to us about student support. We're going to cover topics and questions, methodology, a good proposal, ethical requirements, timelines, and we'll finish with a live question and answer session. Now, for those of you who haven't joined us before in webinars, you'll have a Q&A box, and you can enter your questions live, and we'll answer them. There are people in the background who may answer them, or we may bring them to the table live. So let me introduce our panel. Once again, my name is Stephen Merrifield. I'm with the Digital Events team. Let me get back to the right slide. My name is Stephen Merrifield. I'm with the Digital Events team. With us today is Jillian Woolhead. She is an instructor from the Public Health Department. Jillian, would you say hi?
Hi, my name is Jillian Woolhead, and I'm, as Stephen was saying, I'm an instructor, dissertation advisor, and lead faculty for the online dissertations of Masters of Public Health.
That's great, thank you. And Vishali Chakraborty is a senior student support manager with the University of Liverpool Online. Vishali?
Yes, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to the dissertation preparation webinar. I'm doing this webinar for quite a long time, I think 2.5 years now. So this is an excellent webinar where we give some understanding to our students how to set to start the dissertation and to make the dissertation journey a little bit more seamless than it is.
And last but not least, with us today is University of Liverpool graduate from the Information Technology program, Carl Alexander. Carl, welcome. Would you say hello to our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Carl Alexander. I'm a graduate of your Masters of IT, Information Technology program. Currently reside in Canada. I'm a laboratory technologist at an educational institution, and I teach part-time as well. IT, of course.
Ah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Carl. Now, as Carl just said, he's a graduate. So, Carl, congratulations. Tell us about graduation. Before we get into talking about how to get there, did you attend your graduation? Did you go to Liverpool?
Yes, I did. Graduation.
Tell us if you would.
Yeah, graduation was an awesome event. It was interesting because initially I had second thoughts about getting there and how to get there, fitting it into my schedule. But I did manage to pull it off, and it was entertaining. It was fun. It was a wonderful experience. The entire city was dedicated to graduation, which was amazing for me. I met Vishali, which was nice to meet. I had a couple colleagues, a couple professors. So it was a very welcoming experience to get to my graduation at Liverpool, and it culminated everything at the end for me, which was amazing.
That's it's wonderful because it really, for the online students, your campus is your computer until you go to graduation, and then to be able to touch the red brick and be a part of all these crowds of people and all that sort of stuff. And you're right, Vishali and I get to go, and Michael gets to go, and it is just an incredibly exciting time for us as well because we get to meet everybody too. So again, Carl, congratulations. Jillian, can you tell us what a dissertation is, please?
I certainly can. Yeah. Okay. So a dissertation is basically a major project that you'll have to undertake once you've completed and passed all the modules that are within your program. It's a 10,000-word project of an original piece of work that you will have to carry out and write up as well. And you're required to undertake this research to demonstrate all the things that you've learned in the modules that you've acquired in the program. So all the integration of the knowledge and the mastery that you have taken up. It will also help to fill the academic gap. So this dissertation is really important. To fill the academic gap, you really need to look for something that remains to be done or remains to be answered within the literature. So it's a gap in the knowledge of any scientist or any scientist field of research of your study. So each project must try and fill this gap, which is basically an attempt to fill in some sort of piece of information that's missing. And therefore, you will be contributing to the academic community. So once you've got that, you must start thinking about how you will design your empirical research. And this is always answered when you look at the academic papers. You find your research question, which stems from reading the academic papers of your work. So really thinking about it, you really have to think about the literature that you're wanting to look at. Look at the research topic and do lots of reading. And the University of Liverpool, I've got like an amazing sort of online library that you really must sort of look into and use.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We all start off with a research topic or a proposition, and you may not have an actual research question in mind straight away, but this will come as you've gone along through your modules, and it's really important to choose something that you're interested in. It's basically something that you're passionate about, because you will be spending 9 months working on your dissertation. So you have to think about a research topic that you're interested in, and it's also important to know how to identify research questions. So you might get it from the literature, you might get it from global or local data that shows different trends, and you might also get it from observations and from other colleagues and what they have observed. But all these observations and anecdotal evidence must be backed up with empirical data. So if you've seen something in a research setting that you think needs to be questioned, you also need to be able to back that up with scientific and literature, which shows that there is a gap and that there is something that needs to be addressed. You then move on to conceptualization, and this is basically the action or the process that you form your concept or your idea and you bring it into something a bit more concrete, something a bit more whole. So it would bring you up to your research question, research topic, and also the actual research, how you are going to do this project, what method will you use, who will your participants be, what analysis you're going to use. So it really, the conceptualization really sort of helps you at the beginning of the research dissertation process to really think about all the things that might happen as you're going along, any ethical issues, and it's basically your plan of attack, you know, how you're going to attack the whole dissertation. And then the research will bring on to all the different aspects that you will think about, and it's important to think about your analysis beforehand. And basically your research question will determine your research design. So if you're going to look at correlations, then you'll need to use a quantitative research method. If you're looking at in-depth experiences, you'll use a qualitative one. And again, going on to analysis of findings, this is determined again by your research question and your method, and it really needs to be thought about right at the beginning of the research process. You need to think about that when you're outlining your proposal, what analysis you've got to do. Now going on to logical presentation. So this is basically a set way of which your dissertation is presented, and each program will have their own dissertation guidelines which will help you logically present your dissertation. So it's basically a flow of what you've done. So the introduction, the literature review, your research question development, going on to the methods, and then the results, and then your findings and your discussion. So what's really important, and it's really important for both the University of Liverpool laureate and yourselves, is to disseminate your findings. So we really encourage writing an article, talking at conferences, presenting posters, to get the message that you've found in your dissertation out there, because a lot of the MPH dissertations have found out some really important scientific things that really need to be sort of put out into the wider field. And then with the conclusions, you know, you have to think about what you found, how you will do, what will you do with the findings and apply it to the real world, and also to look at any recommendations to help improve the sort of public health field that you might be in or any other field that you might be in. So those are the main steps of the dissertation process, which follow on quite nicely from one another, but it's important to know this process before you even start doing it, because the more you think about it and conceptualize it, the more likely you will sort of address any issues that might come up. It's no good sort of finding the issues when you're halfway through the dissertation. It's good to do that right at the start.
Carl,
Yes.
is this is this the path you followed?
Oh, absolutely. As you've mentioned, there are specifics to every program, but however, the general path is actually the same. You have to go through that process of finding out what you want to actually research, what you want to study, and that takes some time for you to, to determine what it is you like within your field of study. And for me, that was the biggest part of my journey of finding my dissertation, because I knew I had to spend 9 months on a topic to research every aspect of that topic. So an important part was deciding what I wanted to do. Coming into my dissertation, I had a couple ideas as to what I wanted to do. Some a bit better than others, but as I went through my courses, one course actually stood out to me. So in my case, I found my topic within a course, which was fortunate, and I was able to formulate and narrow down the scope of my topic, which was an amazing experience to find something that gave you much more interest within your program and develop that into research as you go forward with it as well.
Well, Carl, what was that topic? What was it that you researched? I mean, you're a computing student, correct? Or you're a graduate of the computing school, correct?
Correct. Right.
Yeah. So what did you research?
So my research surrounded cloud computing. Specifically, I looked at cloud computing integration in IT curriculums across the Canadian environment, but I localize it, of course, because the scope can be massive. And that's another important point about your dissertation is you have it's 9 months or more, but it's very short once you get into research and time-based and putting everything together. So it's very important to narrow the scope down. So I investigated the integration of cloud computing concepts at Eastern colleges, which included my particular institution and 5 other colleges within the region, to narrow the scope, to look at how colleges actually went about integrating cloud concepts within their curriculum. So it took some research to get out there and figure out what is actually established at the global level, at the university level, at the provincial level within the entire region of Canada, and again within the separate college district that existed. And one of the things that I noticed was that most institutions looked at cloud computing from a usage perspective. So it was present. It was being used, so IT departments made uses of it. But in terms of curricula, the literature provided little to no information on how it was implemented in curricula, how colleges actually taught that concept. Was there any hands-on practical element attached to that concept? So for me, that was interesting. And again, I had maybe some fortunate blessing to work at an institution, so I was able to see, what did we do, or what are we doing as it relates to cloud computing? How are we teaching that to students, and how are we integrating anything within our curriculum? So that's essentially a big part of how it started, and figuring out how wide I should go. Should I go regional? Should I go provincial? Should I, take on the universities as well?
Carl, we've talked about this a couple of times already, how not all the programs are the same. Now, you have something in your program called an IT artifact. Can you talk to us a little bit about this? I mean, what is it specific to the computing dissertation?
Okay, so within the IT programs, as you mentioned, we have an IT artifact, which is essentially a tangible element that can be incepted in a program creation with software, hardware configuration, the inception of new hardware, all standard structures and even guidelines within IT. In my case specifically, I had a twofold approach to my artifact. So I've created a prototype or hardware prototype for cloud computing. So to test whether creating a prototype and creating guidelines as to how to integrate can improve that integration overall across the colleges. So my artifact included both physical device or physical infrastructure, and it also included guidelines as to how to go about improving by using that physical infrastructure across the colleges.
Wow. Okay. And I something to do and with specification and design. Something to do in month 5. How useful was the specification and design that you had to do?
The specification and design was quite useful because you go through the process where you incept an idea, then you develop it further with your proposal. So you have to come up with some more detail as to your idea, how you want to implement it, and do some pre-research about your topic, some literature out there as well. The specification and design expands on that. And a big part of that for me was the workflow and setting up that timeline as to, what I will complete in month 1, in month 2, in month 3, in month 4, and setting that structure as to, this is where I need to get, and these are the steps that I need to follow to get there, which was very important because 9 months seems like a lot, but if you don't plan for it properly, it goes by very quickly.
It'll go by very quickly whether you plan for it or not, Carl. It'll go through. Plan for it, sure. Hey, we got a question from the audience already about Carl, directed to you about, did you bring any information from your modules into your dissertation project, or was it all separate, individual, original research?
Absolutely. One of the modules that I had was cloud computing as a module, and fortunately for me, it was a new module that the university introduced within my second year of studies. And that module had a look at a lot of the public cloud facilities that existed out there and offered exposure to that as well. So a lot of the knowledge that was attained from those modules, and including the core modules as well, as it's computer science. So a lot of that information does come back to play because it's IT, it's cloud, but it's also networking, it's also software design and setup, and a lot of those core structures of IT still integrated within every topic, irrespective of how specific you think your topic is. It still goes back to the fundamentals of the courses that you take throughout your studies.
That's brilliant. Thank you. What was my question here? Best resources for searching for relevant scholarly articles. I mean, is there any particular place for computing students to go to get research information that might not be where a psychology student or a management student would go? Are there particular resources for computing students?
First and foremost, the university's library is quite deep when it comes to resources, and it does a wonderful job of linking many different online resources. So one that I use a lot was the IEEE resource for publications as well. And for IT, you get down to a lot of standards publication. So for instance, for the NIST standards and then standards related to cloud computing or related to storage or modules. So standards, website standards publications are an important part of IT as well. Google Scholar as well, which is linked to the university, is also very, very useful as well when it comes to that. And again, your text, there's you can't get away from your text and your text sources that exist as well too. But the University of Liverpool website has a wide connection to a lot of those databases that gives you in-depth knowledge. It's about searches, how to search for the information that you need and how to filter out the bulk mode of information that you'll get coming at you.
Yeah, we're really, really fortunate with the online library. I mean, it's just it's really an incredible resource. Carl, what were your findings? I mean, what was the outcome of your research?
So the outcome was to test the integration level. So how I went about it was essentially I had to do some data amalgamation, collect data. So I had to look at every college within the district, have a look at their programs, identified if they had programs, if they had topics, if they had courses that included cloud computing and how it was actually being delivered. So I had to interview some of the program coordinators at the colleges, survey some of the coordinators as well, and collect that information. I also scoured each college's program websites to identify every single piece of information they had and they put out there for future students related to cloud computing. And compare that as well with the Ministry of Education standards and guidelines for IT programs and see how it fits. So at the end of the day, what I had to do was look at the standards that were established for cloud computing, what was being delivered at the colleges, look at the IT artifact that I created and amalgamate how that artifact in its inception, being cost effective, being built from an open source infrastructure, was able to teach concepts to students, new students who've never heard about cloud computing before, and be able to integrate it seamlessly into curricula following guidelines and standards that exist. So at the end of the day, my results were favorable. I was able to establish that such a platform is feasible, can be built affordably, can adhere to all the standards that currently exist for cloud computing, and adapt as well to all the gaps that exist at those colleges at that level to help improve their integration.
Wow. And Carl, remind us all right now that you're a graduate. Right? I mean, this isn't something you thought about. This is something that you've done. And so, yeah, I mean, brilliant. Thank you, Carl.
And hey, I would like to add, he's not only done it, he's done it well. He's a Dissertation of the Year award winner for the computer science program. So I believe everybody of us should know that.
You just got outed, Carl.
Yes, so we have felicitated Carl in a nice award ceremony because he has got the Dissertation of the Year award for our not only his program but the whole cluster of computer sciences program that we offer from University of Liverpool Online. So well done, Carl.
Thank you, Bashali.
And in case Bashali didn't say it, well done, Carl. Hey, speaking of Bashali, welcome, Bashali. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how your department supports dissertation students?
Yes. So my job here, at present, I'm a senior student support manager. I support my team and a group of student support manager who works with me and support students during their program. But what we do a focused kind of dissertation support, starting from the beginning when they decide that they are going to be registered for the dissertation. We help them with a phone call. If somebody cannot come over a phone call, we ask them, what are your specific questions? Because we understand it is a huge commitment, a commitment of 9 months or little more, 40 weeks now to be very precise, and that needs some kind of commitment and dedication. And last but not the least, you need to have a passionate topic to research upon. So we talk to the students so that they understand what they're taking up. It's different from a regular module that they have taken. So we just set the expectation from the support team that, yes, this is what you are going to start. And you don't expect something which will be like a regular module where there are regular deadlines you will be asked to. And as Carl said, that you need to be very meticulous and you need to be very organized in setting your goals. So during this 9 months, as long as it seems, it is not that long. If you set it into small breaks, then it seems like, okay, 2 months I will take to do a proposal approval, and then comes my literature review, then comes my ethics approval, and then data collection, and finally I have to actually write all the chapters and finish a dissertation almost 16,000 to 20,000 words based on which program you are. So it's not easy. So we talk to them, we make them understand, and we also prompt them to start researching, do a little bit of pre-research into the online library, into any other resources they have, and at least have a topic in mind. Don't be afraid if you do not have any concrete topic which you can just start writing a dissertation on. It's okay, but at least you should have a certain idea that, okay, I'm passionate about this particular topic, and maybe start narrowing it down. So once you start the dissertation, there comes the time when you should slowly work on it. You have a dissertation advisor who will be helping you during the process, and who actually guides you from the beginning on, okay, this is the topic, you need to refine it a little bit, and maybe Jillian can say more about it, how they help the student on this whole process.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. The dissertation advisors are there straight away. They review your proposal before you even get into the dissertation class. And so you start the dissertation class with a, should be quite a strong proposal if you've revised it based on their comments. And then you get assigned to a dissertation advisor who is quite interested in your topic as well. So they have all the experience that they can give you. And then you start straight away looking at the proposal of approval, because that's really important. You need to have a really strong outline before you can actually move on to do any of the ethics approval and the data collection. So they help you all the way through. They're very responsive. They have to respond to you within 4 days. They help you at each step. So and they're very helpful, and they really want to make your dissertation a success, because they know how much work you've put into the MPH or any other program. So yeah, they're there. They're able to read any of the chapters that you produce, and then they give an overall review of the whole draft of the document as well. So they're very much online and available. And if they aren't online, then they'll let you know when they will be able to return your comments or your queries.
That's great, Jillian. Thank you very much. And Bashali, just off the top of your head, this proposal process is about how long?
Yes, proposal process can be varied. Ideally, we ask the student to complete it within 2 months. As soon as you start, from then 8 weeks, you have 8 weeks to complete, but sometimes it takes longer. There is no penalty if you cannot complete it in 2 months. That means 8 weeks time. But please try to do as soon as possible. I know in psychology and health program, the proposal approval takes little longer than management and computer sciences. There is some complexity to those programs. They have a elaborate ethics process, which Jillian will be explaining in a while. So it takes little longer. Now, coming down to the program specification, we have a huge crowd here who are from different programs and different types of dissertation that you will be taking up. The basic dissertation is same for everybody, but there are some administrative and structural differences at the moment that exist in University of Liverpool's online dissertation. I have divided into 3 clusters. Cluster 1, I call it a classic structure, where most of our programs are under that structure, and you will find more information in the handouts that are provided in this webinar. So they inform which program comes under the cluster 1, cluster 2, and cluster 3. In short, the cluster 1 involves a 8 weeks long research methods training class. You will be starting with that class on the start date. In that class, you will be taught about the methodologies, qualitative, quantitative methods, and that will help you to formulate a proposal, which you are expected to formulate by the end of that research method class. During the research method class, within 2 to 4 weeks time, 4 weeks time actually, you will be matched to a dissertation advisor based on what topic you have brought up in the research method class. And once that is done, you start working with your dissertation advisor, seek a proposal approval, and also there are some other administrative steps that needs to be followed. And you can get those specifications more from your student support manager, or you can ask your dissertation advisor as soon you have a match completed. The second cluster is a new set of programs which follows a different format than the regular dissertation classic format, and it has the research method class as its 8th module, and students straight away go from that 8th module to a dissertation, and they start right away, and within 2 weeks they get a dissertation advisor match and start writing the dissertation. It involves a very small group of program. So most of our program is in the first group I just explained. Third cluster is only the new public health program. So Jillian can explain it more because she is a public health dissertation faculty and also a lead faculty. So that particular new public health dissertation has a different module structure. It is a little bit similar to the cluster 2. You do a research method class separately. And once you start the dissertation, it's a head start. You go there, you have a dissertation match already confirmed even before you go to the dissertation class. You are matched to the DA and you start. So that's the basic difference between these three clusters. So please, for more information, reach out to your student support manager and we can explain it much more in detail that which you are under which cluster. Do not get confused. I know people get confused in this stage of this webinar and ask a lot of questions, but please feel free to ask it to your student support manager if you're confused. Thank you.
Brilliant, Vishali. Thank you very much. Hey, Jillian, can you cover some dissertation steps for us?
Yeah, sure.
Now, let me see if I can get you to the right slide. There you go.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I think we've covered the choose the field of interest because we all know that it's important to be something that you're passionate about. And it's also important to read the research papers. And when we say use keywords, we really mean that, because if you put just something like, you know, a generic term like diabetes into Discover, you will get absolutely thousands and thousands of returns. So you really need to make sure you use your keywords and make sure you're very well up to date with your literature review. So the Boolean operators are really good to narrow down a research or even to widen a research. So that's really important. So you're not totally overwhelmed by the number of retrievals that you get from doing a literature research. So it's really about narrowing your thoughts down again, turning your ideas into a topic and really sort of like focusing in on something. So for example, you might want to look at prevalence of obesity in Italy, but that would be far too expansive and far too difficult to do. You would have to then narrow it down, looking at prevalence of obesity in women in a certain town in Italy, and that's a little bit more doable then. So it's not too overwhelming. It's something that you can really pinpoint the keywords to. So narrowing down your thoughts is and turning your ideas into a research topic, and also looking at the literature. Now, going on to the second steps is, you know, you refine the research topic and you frame your research questions. And usually in quantitative dissertations, you have a few research questions. But in qualitative research dissertations, especially in Masters of Public Health, you usually only have one research question. So there's a difference between the qualitative and quantitative study designs. And then you design your research and develop the methodology. And again, this all depends on the research question. So, you know, if you whether you use qualitative or quantitative. The ethical issues are extremely important, and every research project needs to have ethical approval. If there is no need for ethical approval, then you will need a letter saying, or an official email saying that it's not required. That's especially for humans, with people. And you also need to look at the feasibility issues. So, you know, we have a limited time frame. You have to think about the ease of recruiting patients. You have to think about resources such as cost of travel or the need for translators if you're doing qualitative work and you need a translator. And you also need to think about the ethical issues, which, you know, about anonymity and confidentiality. So the feasibility, again, is about, you know, you can't do a longitudinal study within a 9-month period unless it's a very short longitudinal study. So you'd have to just do like a snapshot study, like a survey or some sort of interview study. And this brings on to the collection of primary data, so the quantitative or the qualitative. And again, that reflects your interests. You will have already had to have decided this before in Masters of Public Health, because you have to decide on which elective module you would take, an applied quantitative or an applied qualitative. So when you probably already know that which one you were going to have to choose before you actually get to writing the dissertation. And the collection of secondary data. So primary data is things like doing surveys, doing interviews, and the collection of secondary data is looking back at retrospective data, so looking at company archives, data sets about health medical records and things like that. So those are the second steps that we have to look at. And then final steps with data analysis. It's very important, as I said earlier, to really know what analysis you're going to be doing, and it's important that you have to write like this in your proposal before it's approved. You will have to know the particular analysis that you want to do, whether it's a thematic content analysis in qualitative, or whether it's if you're using cross-sectional data, you know, you need to know what the analysis is, and you will have learned this throughout your modules, but you will also have your DA there to guide you, to help you, and you will also be able to sort of like talk about it and discuss things with him. The discussion, the contribution of the findings to academia. So this is the most important. What is your study found, and how can, you know, what are the things that you now know that you didn't know before? And that really needs to come in with the recommendations and the conclusion of the key steps. And then link to the findings to theory. So, you know, in the discussion chapter of your chapter, you will have to relate your findings to previous literature, see if it differs, see if it's the same, and the actual context of the place that you've done your study in. So is it particular just to African countries or European countries? Those are the linkage points that you need to sort of like really think about. And you know, there's a whole checklist of things that you can go through when you're going through your dissertation to really check to see that you have checked them all, you know, just to see, you know, as a grader, you will be looking through the checklist as well. So as long as you have looked at this checklist, which will be in your dissertation guidelines, then you'll know what the graders are looking for, the assessors.
That's great. Thank you, Jillian. Hey, can we take a step back here and talk about what makes a good topic?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So it has to be narrow. Like I said, you can't go into a huge generic sort of area. You have to be very narrow and very focused. You have to think about your time. You can't, as I said, you can't do longitudinal stuff. You have to really think about the budget, you know, how much, you know, the researcher is the one who bears the cost of all the research that happens, you know, about traveling to places, stationery. You have to think about your budget costs there. And it will be you that collects the data. You can't have anyone else collect the data for you. You can have help with gatekeepers giving you access to participants, so they can say, you know, there's passing out flyers or posters about your project, but you have to do the actual recruitment and the actual data collection, and also the data analysis. And you will have to prove this when you put this on your dissertation class. So, yep, time and budget constraints, and then the ethical implications.
Okay,
Which I think
good. Yeah, we are going to take a little look at it. And then over here on the right side, we have an example from the management program. You know, it says it should address a question related to your field, and then provides us with a topic area that really isn't an issue, measuring environmental pollution. Okay, but a better topic may be assessing the managerial practices adopted by a company to avoid pollution. You know, it has to, and this is where you're going from something that may be too broad to something that's actually narrow enough and applicable enough. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I think we have a question in that line, and somebody asked if Carl found the choice of topic and the choice of proposal as the first initial stage of your dissertation, and is it easy to do?
It takes work, because you do have to formulate it, and you do go through a couple of iterations of it. It's not a one-off process. So, you know, even though I was successful at the end in my dissertation, it's still, everyone goes through the same process. It's iterative. You'll have a topic, and you think it's the narrowest topic ever, and then you'll find out you need to know. So it is a process, but you have to put something down to start, and then you go forward and you break it down as you go through. And then the proposal, again, it's guided, and your advisors does a wonderful job taking you through, giving you that feedback to help you refine your product. So it's a process that you have to start. You have to start the thinking process. Like, you have to come up with an idea, and they'll help you formulate that into something more specific that you can actually deliver on.
That's great. Thank you. Hey, Jillian, can you talk to us? You've mentioned it several times, quantitative versus qualitative research. Can you just kind of briefly go over this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so you have to decide in the Masters of Public Health whether you want to do a quantitative or qualitative. You can't do a mix of the two, so you can do a mixed method in this particular program. So it's either quantitative or qualitative, and the quantitative really talks about the structured data, the sort of the statistical analysis. It's all about the numbers really in quantitative, and you can use primary data or you can use secondary data. And so for primary data, it might be a survey that you would conduct using a structured questionnaire, and we always advise you to use an already validated questionnaire within the Masters of Public Health, because it takes far too long to actually develop your own questionnaire. And then with secondary data, you have to identify an existing data set, and there's certain things that you have to make sure about this. Is you have to make sure that you have access to the data set. You have to check that you can obtain permission to use it. So there's no point saying, oh, there's a great data set that I can use, I will use it, and then you're not given access to it. So that's important, and you have to make sure the analysis hasn't already been done on that data set before, and check what the data set contains. Does it contain what you want to ask? Are all the variables there? How much missing data is around? Those are the sort of things. So you end up with some very objective conclusions, and surveys. I mean, with experiments, we don't do many experiments in Masters of Public Health, because that you're not allowed to take any intervention in human sort of no taking of samples or anything like that. So it all has to be very ethical in that way. But definitely surveys and secondary data are the main things that we use in the quantitative or cohort studies. And then the qualitative, it tends to be well, it's more subjective, unstructured data in the fact that it would come from interviews or focus groups, not so much observations, but because that takes an awful long time to conduct an observation to make sure you're getting some sort of consensus. But it's more summaried. It's an interview where you have, for the University of Liverpool, you would need 8 hours of interview data or focus group to make it a required recommendation for quality data for that. So yeah, you can choose a combination of interviews or focus groups. Most people tend to use 20 to 30 minute, well, 30 to 40 minute interviews, and then a focus group maybe of 60 minutes to get you up to the 8 hours of UL, data, quality data. And the same words of caution again about qualitative, making sure that you're realistic in terms of resources, logistic issues, how you will recruit participants, and whether it's doable in the time frame.
And in theory, this would all, not in theory, but in practice, this is all worked out in the proposal to begin with anyway. And so by the time you get here, you should just be carrying out the parts of your proposal as you had put together. Yeah. Okay, we've talked an awful lot about ethics. Now, Gillian, can you talk to us about ethics?
Yep. You certainly have to think about it early on, because some ethics committees can take a long time to get back to you, especially the local ethics within your locality. So if you want to recruit patients from a hospital, you would have to make sure you go to the hospital ethics committee to make sure that you know when the committee meetings are setting, what they require, all the data, all the documents that are needed as well. So you obviously need permission from the University of Liverpool and from your local committee manager. And there's so many instances where the local ethics committee don't get back in time, so there is a slight delay. So if you look at that right at the beginning and try and work out your local ethics before while you're doing the proposal, then that's really important, especially in the health program.
Just want to add something over here. So for health, you need to elaborate some of the topics in health and psychology. They need a longer ethical process. However, in management, there is expedited ethics process unless you involve some vulnerable population and you involve certain topic like this. Maybe I will like to ask Carl that was your ethics approval an expedited one?
Yeah, it's similar in IT, and again, it depends on your specific topic and how you're going to go about your data collection. But I had an expedited process because my interaction was pretty much through surveys and no direct interaction with any one of vulnerable groups of that sort. So expedited is a lot faster, and it's not as deep as the public health program.
Yes. So just be aware that each of you have a different ethical requirements, and you need to discuss it with your dissertation advisor. And even within public health and within psychology program, it differs from some degree to the other based on what topic you have chosen and what proposal you are writing. So just be careful about that part. But without ethics approval, nobody can move forward and collect data. That is a very big piece of information all of you should know at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
And Jillian, is there anything you could add to this about the specifics for the public health? And I know that they're going to be similar to the psychology, because really what you're dealing with as your subject matters or your research are people, or the issues that present themselves to people, rather than, I mean, in Carl's case, we're talking about technology. And so the ethics issues are a little bit different than they would be in a degree program that deals with people. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with the Master of Public Health, any sensitive topics or groups that are considered vulnerable need to go to the full IOX sort of committee. But under 18s are not. Nobody can interview or send out a questionnaire to under 18s, to certain other groups, such as vulnerable groups, people with mental health problems, prisoners, and things like that. So there are very sort of specific ethical documents that you need. As I was saying, if you don't need to have ethical approval, you can't just say that. You need to have proof that there is no need for ethical approval. So it's okay saying, oh well, that's great, I don't need it, but you still need an official letter or an email before. As Bashali was saying, you can't do any data collection before you have this. And in Master Public Health, it goes through the review process. Even in expedited sort of ethics, it goes through 2 DAs and a reviewer to make sure that all the ethics documents are there and present and correct. And especially with the Master Public Health, anonymity is very important. So if you're doing interviews, you have to make sure that the transcripts are all completely anonymized. Anyone who helps you, the gatekeepers, the translators, the transcribers, they would have to sign a confidential mandate about confidentiality and anonymity. And then with the confidentiality, you have to do interviews in private rooms. You have to make sure that the data is stored in a locked cabinet or in a password controlled computer. There's all those sorts of things. And also you have to give the participants the right to withdraw from an interview or from a survey questionnaire study without any repercussions on anything. It's their choice. It's totally voluntary. So those are the sort of things that were really important in the Master of Public Health and Psychology, I would say.
And I know, thank you, and I know you mentioned this, but having done student support in the past and having worked with Bashali, I know that this comes up a lot, is the issue of local ethics approval, in that, you really have to be careful if you're working with a hospital or a town, a government, that you can align to their timeframes for their meetings.
Yeah.
And so that's all part of your initial planning. You don't want to get 8-10 weeks into it and then find out that the people you need permission from aren't meeting for another 8 weeks.
Absolutely.
And so line that up and make sure, because as Bashali and as Jillian have said, you can't begin to do any research until you have your approval. Now, Carl, I would have asked you a little bit here, but I know Bashali hit you up on that before on the ethic requirements, and you told us it was expedited. So I'm going to thank you for that. Anything that you want to add to this commentary, Carl?
Just to add a little bit of, for those who are listening and a bit worried about the ethics approval and all the information that Jillian just mentioned, it's all documented. So, even though I didn't have to go through that full ethics approval, I was able to find all that information. It's provided to you, and you're able to go through and read through and see which category you fall underneath. So all the documentation will be provided to you and will be available, so you could go through it. So, and
complicated, it's serious, but it is doable, right?
Yes,
Hi, Stephen. Can I add something to that as well? Just with written consent is very important as well. And if someone can't give written consent, then some sort of thumbprint of consent is needed in those sort of things. And also about the recruitment, it's especially important about ethics in the Master of Public Health and Psychology, about thinking about your positionality. So if you're a doctor trying to interview some nurses, you know, you'd have to think about power imbalances there, and make sure that you're completely open, and, you know, make sure that you mitigate any impact of your position within the research process to make it, you know, although it's subjective, it has to be a fair sort of observation of their study.
Right, you can't just be asking them anything. You have to be consistent. There has to be a plan. There has to be a purpose, so to speak. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Okay, anything else that anybody wants to add? Because we're about ready to answer what is a lot of questions coming in from the audience. So any last words on ethics? Okay, very good. Let's go ask a couple of questions here and see what we got. Okay. Well, we know that one. Let me see what do we got. Carl, we got a question for you here, which is, what did you find as the easiest part of the dissertation? Was it developing the proposal? Was it submitting it? Was it waiting for your results? Was it was there an easy part to this?
There wasn't an easy part per se. What I suggest is structure is important. Having a timeline is important. Understanding what your deliverables are is important, because you do have to submit your proposal. You have to submit your specification and design in relation to an IT dissertation, and then you have to do like a milestone, you know, update period. So staying on top of these things are important, and those would help you actually stay on track. Waiting for my result was not easy because my period had a long gap in terms of when I completed my dissertation. So I had the unlucky draw of waiting about 6 months to get that results back. So it all depends on when you start your dissertation. Sometimes you can get it quick based on when the board meets. But my advice is always structure. Like have a plan. And from your proposal, that sequence can change when you get to your specification and design. It's not set in stone, because when you start your pre-process, you'll determine why. I might need more time to interview these people. Like in my case, some of the professors I had to interview, it so happened that it was summer, and in Canada, summertime, full-time faculty are out. So, you know, my data collection period stretched a bit longer than I had liked because of that whole issue. And I identified that in some of my when I laid that out as well too. So that's the advice I'll give you there. But it's not undoable. It's not, you know, impossible. But I won't use the word, you know, easy. Everything you had to put in the work to get out of it.
And let's be clear, it's not meant to be easy. This is the final step of a master's program with a top 1% worldwide university. It's meant to be earned, and you're meant to learn how to conduct research. And so, I mean, yeah, and Carl, for one quick correction, if I can, I don't think there's any short wait for your results. There are some that are long, and there are some that are longer, but once you submit, if you don't have your results tomorrow, it's too long. Right, for some students it's a couple months, for some students it's a lot of months, depending on the timing. But I think once you submit it, then you're just in a wait. And so, you know, some are better than others. Hey, Carl, is there a place that people can access your dissertation if people wanted to take a look at it?
It's not published yet. It's not available. I'm not sure if the university has in the dissertation pool. But in terms of dissertation, what I could tell you, there are a lot of good example dissertation that you'll get once you get through your courses. That gives you a good layout of things that you're interested in, or just the flow and the structure of how you should write your dissertation, and the advisors as well. And that's something I've mentioned that you guys mentioned earlier about matching. For at least the IT programs, your advisors, it's sort of a dress rehearsal where they present their credentials, papers that they've written. So you get to go through a list of advisors and see which one actually fits your research topic, and you pick someone who. So for instance, in my case, my advisor had experience in cloud computing, so it lent itself perfectly to my topic. Yeah, so you get to have a look at that and see, you know, what's out there and what's available.
Okay. Hey, we got one last question, and Carl, you're the popular one today, so here it comes. And it comes up all the time, and it's the issue of stats. How did you collect data, and was there any statistical analysis to your research?
My data was twofold. So surveys, of course. I used the Liverpool platform just to make it easy, and I think Liverpool has changed a bit now. So I use the Google platform to collect my data with Google Forms, create my surveys through there, collect it through there, so everything is captured at the university's end. And there were analysis, but that platform allowed me to use a lot of the tools that they had available to analyze the data, create my graphs and everything else that I need to statistically compare the different type of data that I have and go about and write an analysis on it. I know that there's other tools. There's Cloud Monkey that a lot of people use as well to formulate the questions and get it out there. But I chose the Liverpool approach just to keep everything sort of consistent within my account at that time.
Okay, Carl, thank you very much. Hey, we're at the end of our time. We have answered all your questions. I want to thank everybody in my in the panel today, Jillian and Bishali and Carl and the folks in the background. You've done a great job. We have good information for everybody. With that, I'm going to encourage you to collect the handout, and don't forget to check your specific dissertation guidelines. With that, once again, thank you, everybody. Carl, would you say something to wish everybody well on our way out the door?
Yeah, what I will say to everyone is that it's not impossible. It's doable, and the process works. So if you follow the process, go through the guidelines that is laid out for you, the dissertation guideline does a wonderful job of explaining where you need to go from step to step to step and where you need to get to. So if you follow those guidelines, you will have success with this. But please do set a timeline and manage that properly, because it can go by very quickly.
That's great, Carl. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a University of Liverpool Online Dissertation Success webinar. We wish you our very best with your dissertation, and some of us will see you next year at graduation. Have yourself a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
Bye.